What we find is that many of us are sort of operating as parents on autopilot in pre-pandemic times, especially, right? You're like, this kid needs to go here, this lunch needs to be made, this work needs to get done, and we just go, 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 go. And we have a sense that we want things to be better, but we don't know how to change it. We don't know what to do to make it better. So the four-way view is really a tool that we can use to sort of take stock of the present. And that will generally, for most people, reveal opportunities to make things better in a way where you're not just sacrificing one thing to get more of another. So our default assumption is that, well, if I want my work to be better, then I better take time away from sleep or from parenting or from friends. And taking the four-way view starts to help you think about how the different parts of your life are interconnected.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audry Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, and welcome to episode 137, which is being released on April 24th, 2020. In my chat with Alyssa for this week's interview, we talk a lot about values, identifying our values, and figuring out what's important to our families. So I thought it was perfect time to share a simple thing that was an idea that came in from listener Gail. So here's this week's one simple thing.
Yes, I have a daughter who started something good with her children. She has 4 girls that are between 5 and 11. And what she has them do, it's called Thoughtful Thursdays. And on Thursdays, they each write some notes, or the youngest one just draws some pictures, and they select different kids in their class to send them to. And it just gives them something to look forward to, getting a letter from someone. It's just been a good thing because once she started it, now other kids in the class have started it, and they send different classmates a little note or a drawing. For the younger ones that can't write any notes, they just make a little drawing and send it to them. So just lets their classmates know that someone is thinking of them. And what's interesting is this is their first year at that school. So it's a way of them communicating and making a friendship also. Thank you.
I just love this idea of Thoughtful Thursdays. So thank you so much, Gail, for sending in your idea. And I especially like the ripple effect that this one family's action is having in their community. And I encourage others to try something like that. It's a simple thing that we can do, not only during this time when we could all use a little more encouragement and thoughtfulness, but also all the time. And it's a great way to communicate a value of kindness and compassion and gratitude to our kids. So thanks again, Gail, for that great sharing. And now it's time to get to this week's interview, which is my chat with Alyssa Westring, who is co-author of the brand new book, Parents Who Lead: The Leadership Approach You Need to Parent with Purpose, Fuel Your Career, and Create a Richer Life. Alyssa co-wrote this book with Stuart Friedman, who's the author of the best-selling Total Leadership. Here's a little bit about Alyssa. Alyssa is an associate professor of management at the Driehaus College of Business at DePaul University. She is an award-winning educator and an inaugural presidential fellow at DePaul. She's the director of research for Total Leadership, and she brings her expertise to evaluating the impact of total leadership on clients and program participants. Findings from this research are used both for continuous program improvement and for disseminating the author's discoveries and their implications for both scholars and practitioners. Westring has co-authored many articles and chapters with Friedman and made significant contributions to the research in his books, Leading the Life You Want and Baby Best. Alyssa is also a scholar of diversity and inclusion with a focus on women's careers in STEM fields. Alyssa's work on women in medicine has been funded by the National Institutes of Health. She is a founding member of the Research Partnership for Women in Science Careers, and her scholarly writing can be found in numerous academic journals. Alyssa regularly speaks to Fortune 500 companies about creating organizational cultures that facilitate work-life integration, diversity, and inclusion. She also writes for the popular press, and she has a TEDx talk, which I will link in the show notes, called The Secret Life of a Work-Life Insider. I'm excited to welcome Alyssa Westring to the podcast today. Welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So Alyssa, why don't we just start by you telling a little bit about your background and how you came to write this particular book?
Sure. So starting when I was in undergrad in my, early 20s, I was already starting to think about how am I going to have this great career that I want, as well as be a mom, which I knew was something that was really important to me. And perhaps like the anxious worrier that I am, I was like, how is this going to happen? What are we going to do? And I went to grad school to study that topic. I found the field of organizational psychology, which is psychology of people at work. And I started studying work-life integration and have been studying it ever since. So my research over the last 20 years has been asking this question of how do we help people make better choices about balancing work and family, but also how do we help organizations make better policies? How do we influence these things on a national level, on a global level? So really asking those questions and using research as a tool to answer them. So that's what I do. I'm an associate professor of management at DePaul University in Chicago. And I teach this stuff, I research it, I study it. And for the last 3.5-ish years, I've been specifically focused on working parents and how can working parents work in their families and their partnerships with their children to not only be more effective as parents, but also to thrive in their careers and the other parts of life. So the subtitle of the book you read out, it's not just how to be a good parent, it's how to do that while also being, finding greater fulfillment in the other parts of life as well. So the book is really the culmination of many, many years of research, but intense research on working parents over the last few.
Well, it's just fantastic. And I love everything about the book and how you designed it and everything else. Before we go too much further, because, we're still in this sheltering in place thing. I think it's week 6. I've been putting notes on my calendar to try to know who knows
what is time?
Where we are. So I like to start each of these interviews just asking who you're sheltering with, how old your kids are and, what's going on with you right now. Where are you?
Yes. So I'm in Chicago in the Hyde Park neighborhood, and I am with my husband, and he's a budget manager for a different university. And I am with my 2 kids, ages 8 and 10, and they are remote learning right now. And then we've got an old dog that sits on the couch with us, who may make an appearance as well right now. So yes, that's my family.
And then before we started recording, we were talking about our new office location. So where's your new office in your home?
Oh, so I'm in the playroom because this is where the Ethernet cable comes into our house. So it's the only place to get really good internet. So this is where it is. And we just this morning set up a second computer that can attach directly to the internet because anytime we try and do a Zoom thing from elsewhere in the house, it's really spotty.
Well, I really appreciate your message and your book, especially right now, because boy, are we all having to integrate everything right now, aren't we?
Yes, there are no like separations among the different parts of life for many of us.
I almost think too that after this experience, my hope is that corporations and everyone's going to be more understanding
Mm-hmm.
that it's all connected and that we can still work and we can still do things even with like sometimes our kids interrupting in between or that kind of thing. It's become more normalized now
I think
yeah.
managers who were reluctant to try it out because they were afraid of what would happen, well, now they're being forced to. So maybe when we return, there will be more sort of understanding of how it can work for people.
Well, and also I just think, yeah, just that compassion for people. I mean, I think your kids' ages, they probably require quite a bit of your involvement, but also they can do quite a bit on their own,
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
But for parents who have younger children, like toddlers
Yeah.
right now, I mean, this is unbelievably challenging
Yep.
because, when you are accustomed to having childcare for that age and now you're kind of expected to be working, it's a lot.
It
I feel
is.
really for those families, especially right now.
Absolutely. I think, just realizing that I think for all of us sort of appreciating the good parts of the situations that we're in
Yes.
and realizing that, many of us have a lot of privilege, even though it feels like things are really hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've said many times in almost every interview with my youngest child being 16,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're completely like, I can work as much as I need to. I can do my own thing. They're all self-sufficient. They're each making dinner once a week. I mean,
That's awesome.
but that's just sort of like they're older.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I even have my eldest daughter who's 26 and lives 3 hours away and is a teacher is home with us too. So I've got like extra adult help here.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about, my husband and I were talking about, could we get our kids to cook dinner?
Oh, I bet you could.
If we ordered one of those meal delivery like kits where it has all the instructions. So we're thinking about how we can put them to work as well.
You could even start with things though, like tacos or something super simple. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Some of the meal delivery kits are kind of complicated. I don't know how much they are, but like Taco Tuesday could be, you're just learning how to brown some ground beef or whatever you're using.
Yes.
So that's good. Well, let's talk about this amazing book because it is honestly, as I was reading it, I'm thinking, this is what I'm always thinking when I go, a lot of what I teach parents and what I've learned is from leadership and like working to get your company on the same page culturally, like creating this like positive culture.
Right.
So actually my book I wrote was about how parents can create the culture of summer camp, the positivity, the connection, the growth at home. So
I love that.
I feel like my life is so intertwined. My business is a summer camp. So it actually feels like a family, like our coworkers, like our year-round team, we're meeting every morning and we've got 4-year-olds on our Zoom call and we've got like just, everything going on. So I've always felt my life has always been integrated because of the type of business I'm in. Even during the summer, our kids were always with us. We'd have childcare for them when they were younger, but they would be there for meals. They would be with us at all camp events. So it was like kind of this coming and going, like I'd be working and with my kids. And so it's unusual though. I know most people most
people don't have that. Whereas, for me, especially being a work-life researcher, right, I get to talk about my kids and think about them. And that's sort of part of the deal of my job as well.
Yeah, so good. Okay, well, let's talk about a few of the key concepts in your book, which also talk a little bit about the book. So your co-author, Stuart Friedman, wrote another book called Total Leadership. And so this is sort of, from what I understand, you're applying the similar principles with some newer research to parenting and sort of just connecting everything together.
Exactly. So Total Leadership was developed for working adults, and it's been throughout the years, given at so many different companies, but also a lot of sort of young professionals earlier in their career. And it can apply to everybody, but it's geared towards sort of an individual focus. And people were like, I want to do this with my partner, with my kids. I want to have this experience together. So we sort of revamped the same fundamental ideas of what it means to be a total leader, a leader in all parts of life, for how that could apply specifically to working parents.
And you talk about, I think the other thing that's about this is honestly, you could read this at any time in your life. To me, I mean, in fact, the earlier, the better in your parenting, but even if your kids are older, you could still read it because it's always, I think that I feel like in work, we're, often so much better about stepping back and doing, strategic planning once a year or, what's going well, what's not going well, having weekly meetings. I mean, there's so much structure usually in our careers that often even people who are really great leaders at work forget to apply those same principles that they know how to use at home.
Exactly. So we have so many of the people, we spent about a year working with many dual career couples, and what we found is that they're so enlightened about what great leadership looks like at work. And then and I'll include myself in this, we get home and we turn into these annoying micromanagers who are like, did you do it? Did you do it, appropriately? Is it done? And we forget all of that good stuff that we learned about how to inspire other people and get them on board and create a shared vision and culture. And we just abandon it when we walk into the house.
And then sometimes get kind of the same results that people who aren't leading at work get from their employees, which often is like not meeting expectations or not on the same page or all that. So it's just, I like how I've said this a long time to people. In fact, when I speak with parents, I'll often say, hey, are any of you like managers or leaders at work? And, like some of them raise their hand. I'm like, well, all the things that you've learned about communicating and, setting goals, they work at home too. And people are like, oh my gosh, I do know how to do this.
Exactly. It's a skill that we have. We just have to remember to turn it on. Yeah. And if you don't have it and you're learning how to do it at home, then that makes you better in your job as well, because then you know how to communicate and set goals and check in with people. So it's sort of a win-win. Developing these skills.
Definitely. So parents don't have to think of it as like, oh my gosh, here's another thing that I need to do. They don't have to feel any guilt or anything. It's just more like, let's kind of integrate our whole life, what's important to us, and apply these things here. So talk about the, what's it called? The four-way view.
Yes. So what we find is that many of us are sort of operating as parents on autopilot. In pre-pandemic times, especially, right? You're like, this kid needs to go here, this lunch needs to be made, this work needs to get done, and we just go. And we have a sense that we want things to be better, but we don't know how to change it. We don't know what to do to make it better. So the four-way view is really a tool that we can use to sort of take stock of the present. And that will generally, for most people, reveal opportunities to make things better in a way where you're not just sacrificing one thing to get more of another. So our default assumption is that, well, if I want my work to be better, then I better take time away from sleep or from parenting or from friends. And taking the four-way view starts to help you think about how the different parts of your life are interconnected. So we think it's sort of four buckets: work, career, that could include school for people. Even if you're not currently working, it's sort of your career over the lifespan. Family, obviously kids and partner, but also extended family. I think a lot of us are thinking about elderly parents right now in a new way. Community, which is friends, neighbors, religious organizations, political organizations, etc. And then ourselves, our physical and mental health, our mind, our body, our spirit. So sort of looking at each of these four domains of our life and saying, how important is it? How much time and energy am I spending on it? And how am I doing? How satisfied am I? And then looking at how all of those pieces sort of fit into the puzzle of your life right now. And that, we find, reveals opportunities to make things better across domains, not just in one. And then when you start talking to your partner and your children about their four-way view and how things are going for them, maybe you don't talk to a 2-year-old about it, but a 16-year-old you certainly could. You start to think about, okay, how could things be better, not just for me, right? Because my life would be better if my husband cleaned the house instead of me doing it. But how could we change things so it's better for all of us, for everybody? And maybe that does mean him cleaning more, but maybe it doesn't, right? So looking at sort of all of the interconnections to find creative solutions to make things better, because the obvious stuff, we would have done it already if it worked.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I do love that. And I think too, especially when you think about that community piece, I feel like in recent years, many parents have become so overwhelmed, just like getting through the day, getting their kids where they need to be, getting themselves to work. It's just sort of like this, that has lost a lot of, people don't have as close of neighborhoods. Most people don't have a religious affiliation or any kind of outside group that they connect with. And I'm wondering if this pandemic is going to change that perspective at all, because, it just makes it even more clear how we all need each other, and nobody can do this alone. And you really can think creatively about how to, like, I'm thinking even with people with younger kids, even if you were just making, an extra set of your dinner and trading one night a week. Like if you had really young kids, or, ordering one take, I don't know, just there's so many just ways that you can actually say, hey, how can we help each other? And both of us win, create something.
I think community is at the forefront of our minds right now, because we're, most of us are social distancing for the greater good.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
We're doing it for our communities, for our society. So we're aware of the sacrifices that we're making for other people in a way that's sort of much more straightforward than normal. And yet I think we assume that we need to feel more isolated because we're physically isolated. So how can we cultivate that sense of community, as you were saying, in these current conditions? I know in my neighborhood, people put teddy bears in their windows. I don't know if this has spread throughout the country or if it's just my neighborhood, but people throughout the neighborhood are putting teddy bears in their windows, and the kids can go on teddy bear hunts. So as we're walking through the neighborhood, there's a teddy bear, there's one. And it creates this sense that, we're all in this together and we're doing something together, even though, there's no human contact by looking at a teddy bear. It's just a reminder that we're all thinking about each other. And it's really a beautiful thing. I get choked up when I look at those teddy bears.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I hadn't heard of that. I know that there are neighborhoods doing online bingo. I've heard of so many cool things like parades of teachers driving through neighborhoods, and the cheering at 8 p.m. for the health workers, and all those kinds of things. They're very campy, and they definitely draw people together because you're all kind of feeling like, for once, it's not about political affiliation or whatever. So, socioeconomics or how old you are, we're all in this together. And I think things like that, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that so much. The other thing that I wanted to there's so many things, and we can't talk about all of it because people need to get your book to read it all. But I
can't reveal all my secrets.
No, don't reveal all your secrets. But I will say that I really appreciate the activities that you have.
Yeah.
Because I'm a real tangible kind of person. And I think that, so like in chapter 1, you talk about just identifying goals and identifying shared goals. And then I really, really like your talk about values. This is something that I think is really important. And it's something that corporations really do to try to make sure they're hiring people whose values are in alignment with them, because you realize that you really, even if someone had skills, if they don't value the same things that are important to you as a company, they're not a good fit. So talk a little bit about kind of this process of figuring out what you value, what your partner values. And I loved the story about what you did with your little kids. So I want, when they were little. So talk about that concept in a way that makes it easy for parents to grasp.
Yeah. So this is one of those concepts that in organizations, in leadership research, it's not new at all. And frankly, talking about values with our children isn't particularly new either. But we sort of want it to be the foundational conversation that happens for people as they move forward. And I've been talking with a lot of corporate audiences and working parent groups over the last few weeks, and saying, what are the values that you hope define this moment in your lives as an individual and as a family? So things like empathy, kindness, fairness, fun, right? All of those different words, when you have the language to talk about them and ideally written down, it becomes a lot easier to say, why are we doing this? What should we be doing, right? And it provides sort of a common ground to talk about what matters most. I know at DePaul, my institution, we're talking a lot about our organizational values and what do we care about and how does that impact the choices that we're making on a daily basis, right? How does that, if a student comes to me and says, I can't finish this assignment on time because I'm stressed out about the pandemic, how do my institutional values inform my response? So the same thing goes in our family life. If we have values that we all sort of want to cultivate together, how can that inform how I respond to my kids interrupting my work or, feeling like I'm trapped in my house and I need some alone time, right? So using those values as sort of the North Star, just like organizations do, can be really, really powerful for families. So as you mentioned, when my kids were little, we did kindness, fairness, fun, and we made like a little family flag and we wrote a little song. And what kindness and fairness and fun look like to a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old is different than an 8-year-old and 10-year-old, right? But how do we talk now about those same things, right? What does fairness look like now to them? Is it fair that they can't go to school? Well, when you think about fairness in a much more complex way about protecting the vulnerable members of society, et cetera, it is fair, right? But that's a much more sophisticated conversation to have, but we've already laid the groundwork that we care about fairness. When I do this with my college students, I give them a link to a website, and I could share it if anybody wants
definitely.
it. But it's a list of 500 values, and I just say, pick your top 10 and tell me why, right? And that's great in a job interview. When they say, tell me about yourself in a job interview, you don't just want to say, I'm a junior at DePaul, right? You talk about who you are and what you care about. But it's that same thing that they could do in college, they could bring to their families. Maybe now they move back home for the pandemic and you're getting on each other's nerves or you're feeling frustrated. How can those same conversations about values help you in this moment figure out what could be better, what could be different?
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I definitely want you to share the link. I've used a whole bunch of these different things and I've been to
it doesn't even matter. Like Google anything that comes up.
The values thing. I remember going to this leadership talk that was Ken Blanchard and John Gordon. It was like a conference, they had us do this exercise where first you identify from a big list and then you do this thing where you narrow it down. Like if you had to choose between, kindness and honesty or,
exactly.
And it's really interesting. I mean, it's hard because you're like, well, I value all these things. I value
of course, yes.
But it's really good to try to articulate. And I think with younger kids, and you mentioned in the book, one of the things that we do at camp and that I really share with parents is even if you just pick one thing to focus on for a time, a lot of times in November, people think about gratitude. Well, so you can focus on it for a while and do some practices and talk about it with your kids and make it a conversation every day at dinner.
Exactly. And you're like, if sort of the underlying sentiment is as a family, we care about showing gratitude, then that can be woven into anything that you do.
Absolutely. And then maybe it carries over and it maybe becomes something that is one of your children's as they grow into an adult, becomes something they value a lot.
Right. Exactly. And finding ways to honor the unique values that you have as individuals, as well as the shared ones. It doesn't have to be 100% overlap.
Correct. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. I love that. And I think too, sometimes parents don't realize that they haven't communicated their values. I'm sure you're familiar with the study where they had 10,000 kids say, do your parents value more that you're a kind, contributing member of society versus your grades? And 80% of the kids said that their parents valued grades more, but then they asked the parents and the parents, it was like flipped. So it's like the parents actually valued that their kids become kind, contributing, compassionate members of society, but they hadn't shared that with their kids. So I think this really does require conversations and, and it's not hard. It doesn't have to be hard. It's very similar to what we do, how we talk to kids about other things, in our lives.
Exactly.
So.
And a lot of people feel like I don't have the time, right? I'm too busy for this. And, we have found over and over again that when people make the time upfront for these sorts of conversations, whether it's with kids or coworkers or community members or friends, that it does seem to save them time and increase their happiness in the long run. It really does pay off, even if that's sort of hard to get on board with upfront, right? Sacrificing some time up front.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so much of what's in your book is what I try to communicate with parents. There's a part in my book where I share with parents just the words to say when you're letting your kids know that you need them to do more around the house. So like, kind of the conversation that you have is not, you have to do these chores. It's, you know what, we're all living here together and we only function well when everybody's contributing. And now that you're 8, you're able to do, this and this and this. So each year we're going to be adding some more responsibilities because as you get older, you're going to become this adult and you're going to have to know how to do all this stuff. So this is something that's good for you. It's good for us. We work, we have lots going on. We're going to help too. And it's just giving people those words. And like you said, it might take a little time to set it up and get it going, but then you've got your kids vacuuming and doing the dishes forever. And
exactly.
You've saved. And go ahead.
The same sort of ideas that I've been trying to explain to my kids why me taking time to exercise is actually really good for them.
Yes.
Even if it means that I am not paying attention to them in that moment. And I can say it and sometimes they remember that. And then sometimes like this morning, they're still in there saying, why won't you pay attention to me? And, and there's still value in doing that.
Yeah.
And explaining it, even if in the moment they are not like fully embracing the idea that they should let you have a peaceful workout.
Well, and as we all know, usually it takes time to learn things. So It's not like just this one conversation about, mom needs to take care of herself and getting exercise. I'm going to be nicer to you next time. You got to like remind them again and again and just say, hey, I'm still needing this exercise.
Exactly. Every day.
Every single day. Oh, it's so great. Well, Alyssa, I just really enjoyed chatting with you. Your wisdom is so helpful. And again, I'm going to hold up your book so people can see it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
But it's just beautiful. Yeah, it's just and it's very well designed. And I think it's something that can be used as a resource. Does not have to be one of those sit down and read the whole thing in one sitting.
No, come in, do a little bit, do one activity.
Yep. And during this time, wow, the values, family values coming out of this with a flag. We've got some time together and hopefully at least families are having dinner together or doing something that's like together time each day. And if you are, what an opportunity we have when we don't have sports and we don't have anything going on to maybe take this time to clarify a little bit what our values are for this time in this season. I love it. I think it's really applicable. So I hope people will take a look at your book.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming on, Alyssa. And I'm sure we'll stay connected.
Yes, absolutely.
And continue to connect. I really enjoyed my conversation with Alyssa, and I hope you felt inspired by her words as well. I really encourage you to pick up a copy of the book, Parents Who Lead, as it has some really great exercises and activities to help you just kind of integrate all those different aspects of your life and really figure out what it is that's most important to you and get things more in alignment. I really, really appreciate that. And I'd love to hear how you end up using any of the principles that we talked about in this episode or that you read about in her book. My favorite for this week comes from the Greater Good Science Center out of UC Berkeley. I'll put a link in the show notes to an article by Brooke Anderson called 6 Daily Questions to Ask Yourself in Quarantine. The 6 questions are: what am I grateful for today? Who am I checking in on or connecting with today? What expectations of, quote, normal, unquote, am I letting go of today? How am I getting outside today? How am I moving my body today? What beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? You can access all these questions and this great article that is really helpful if you are wanting to just improve your own well-being or the well-being of the people in your family. My listener question for this week came in via email, and it's from Robin. Her question was, how do I stay calm while balancing parenting my 3 kids who are currently ages 14, 12, and 6? First of all, I think it's really important to remember that even the most peaceful, calm person you know isn't always that way. So relax your expectations of yourself and don't expect perfection, because there's no way with 24/7 parenting, especially in the kind of time we're in right now, that we can remain as calm as we'd like to at all times. What's really most important, besides learning our own strategies and modeling for our kids that we are trying to develop better ways to calm down, it's also important to repair after we've said or done something in a non-calm state that negatively impacts our kids. In so many of my conversations with parenting experts that I've had on the podcast, they've shared the importance of learning our own self-regulation so that we can model for our kids how it's done. Alyssa and I talked in this week's interview about her book, Parents Who Lead, and about these 4 domains or areas that we need to think about. And they are our career, our family, our community, and our self. And in the self category, she talks about the importance of looking at our own physical health, mental health, spirituality, and relaxation. And I think all of those things that we do to keep ourselves well in those areas will help us be able to access better calm down strategies in the stressful situations which inevitably come up with our kids. I've found in my work with kids that helping them learn how to calm down is really an important skill, because it's pretty much the first thing that all kids need to do when they're in any conflict. And it's really the same for adults. So practicing calm down strategies for yourself or helping your child identify theirs is really important. Some of the suggestions that you've probably heard before, but I don't mind saying again, are going for a walk or getting a little exercise, finding a place or keeping a place that's sort of your chill spot where you just can go to relax, doing some breathing, even if it's just a few breaths, counting, listening to music, expressing gratitude or writing down a few things that you're grateful for, finding something to laugh at. Laughing really calms us down, hugging someone, loosening up with like a yoga move or a stretch, or just sitting quietly for a few minutes. Those are a few of the suggestions in my post, 10 Ways to Teach Kids to Calm Down. And I'll put a link in the show notes to that post if you want to read more about that. Thank you so much, Robin, for a great question, which is applicable to all of us at all times, but probably especially right now. As always, you can find notes, links, and other resources related to today's conversation by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my email list so that you don't miss out on any of the great resources I have available for raising thriving kids. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with a friend. Please take a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. This month on the podcast, on my website, and in the Happy Campers Book Club, we're focusing on the theme of kindness. The excerpt from Happy Campers that I want to share with you this month is from secret number 8, Make It Cool to Be Kind. Viewing both our own and our children's kindness through a growth mindset lens is extremely important. Rather than labeling ourselves or others as kind or unkind people, we can recognize kind behavior and promote the concept that each of us can get better at being kind through intentional practice. The surface level changes that occur when kindness is practiced regularly is a quieter, less volatile family environment. On a deeper level, everyone feels less stressed and happier when we are both the givers and receivers of more kindness. At home, parents can do both small and big things to encourage more kindness. Besides making your home life more pleasant, you'll be raising kind humans who likely will bring positive changes to the world. I'm Audry Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again next week for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.